digital media, and digital marketing blogger, and an industry analyst on a website called moseskemibaro.com, where he really writes about everything digital in Kenya and Africa. And he has actually been nominated as one of the influencers for LinkedIn under Pulse Live. So I'm sure he'll throw that in so that we can vote for him, especially after he has taken us through the class. So without further ado, I would like to welcome Moses. Please take it away. Thank you.
So without further ado, because I think we've already eaten into a bit of our time, we only have 1 hour and 50 minutes. There's a lot of material to go through. I have to confess that there might be a few slides I'll have to miss just because of time. But what I'll do is I promise I'll share this with Hazel, and she will be able to ensure that she can also distribute the resources so that in your own time, and maybe even for the broader teams that you handle within your organizations, you also have the benefit of these resources so that you can actually use them going forward. I'm just going to pull up my presentation. I hope that's visible to all, and I think we can get started right away. So Hazel has very kindly introduced me, and I just wanted to go through our agenda for today. First of all, we'll just have a clear agenda of what we're going to cover. We'll then go into understanding what digital marketing is. We'll then try and understand what is customer profiling. I think this is probably one of the most important aspects of today's session. So I really encourage you to pay attention as we go through this particular portion. And then we'll go into social media marketing, kind of looking at all the platforms, how they work, and more importantly, how you can get the most out of them. Also how to create content and also marketing content, or what we call content marketing. And then a very, very important area, compliance and data privacy. I'm not even sure if you've seen the news today. Increasingly, banks are getting fined for using people's email addresses to send updates without consent. When in particular they're not customers, and this is usually done through the Office of the Data Protection Commissioner. So I think it's important to understand compliance, because one of the things the digital marketing requires us to do is kind of handle customer data. And of course, that means we are then subject to both international and local laws. So making sure that we are cognizant of those two things. And then we'll have a Q&A session where you'll get a chance to ask questions. I probably would recommend using the chat or the Q&A chat session capability on Zoom. And then we'll end our masterclass hopefully at 10 sharp. So a little bit about myself, founder and CEO of .savvy. It's one of the first digital agencies in the country. I've also worked for Opera Ads. If you ever used Opera Mini on your phone, that's a company where I was involved in helping them do digital advertising. Goal.com, if you like football, you probably know this website. I was involved as a consultant running East Africa sales. InMobi, which is a leading mobile ad network. I worked with them for a couple of years. And then Dealfish, which is now known as GG Kenya. I was involved in setting that up. I also blog, as mentioned by Hazel, at moseskemibaro.com. And I've been training people on digital marketing now for, almost 20 years, believe it or not. And something I'm very, very proud of. I'm a proud supporter of Arsenal Football Club. I'm sure there's a good number of people in the room. And this is usually the part in training where I say, if there are any Man United people, you're more than welcome to leave the training. But of course, I'm joking. So what are we hoping to achieve today? I think number one, demystifying digital marketing for insurance. Insurance, I think, is one of the most complicated and least understood things in the market. And I think when it comes to yourselves as agents and selling this to your customers or prospective customers, really kind of figuring out how can we use digital marketing to sell something that basically is poorly understood and usually requires quite a bit of education. And really looking at how you focus on digital channels to attract, engage, and also retain customers. Again, it's not enough to just acquire the customers, but digital is also incredibly powerful when it actually comes to retaining as well. Hopefully at the end of the session, we'll try and equip you with practical skills. So showing you exactly how to create content, tools, practical knowledge. We'll also delve into things like AI and how AI can really give you a leg up when it comes to simplifying the process of doing things like your social media content. So we'll look again at practical hands-on stuff. I'll actually open my screen and access some dashboards, and you'll be able to see how you can do this for yourself. And then we'll look at the importance of compliance and data privacy. We'll go through the two laws that both the Kenya Data Privacy Act, and we'll also look at the GDPR, which is a European one, but cascades globally. And I think once you understand both, then the idea is that you will then have a very clear understanding of sort of the boundaries and the guidelines that you need to follow. In terms of outcomes, we want to focus number one on the customer profiling. One of the things we're going to do here is going to, creating a customer insurance journey or a customer journey specific to insurance, so we can see how we can create a good experience through our content and social media to ensure that people actually are purchasing or renewing policies through us. We'll also get to see what it takes to set up your own social media profiles and also run paid campaigns, that is running ads around the different platforms to get clients. And then also content creation. We'll look at different types and formats of content. We'll do some of practical stuff. I'll show you how to do this. And then lastly, the compliance component, just to make sure that we're sort of aligning to the same. So the plan, as it were, was that between 8 and 8:10, we're a little bit behind. We'll just do the introduction piece. Then we'll go into the customer profiling, where we'll try and understand what it takes to sort of identify customers, looking at their life stages, profiling them accordingly. And then we'll look at some examples of that, which I think will be really helpful for you to understand that when it comes to digital, quite often we say it's not one size fits all. You want to make sure that your digital actually caters to specific segments. Then we'll have a health break for about 10 minutes, because again, we're going through a lot of content. So just give you a bit of a break. And then we'll go into content creation and marketing. So we'll look at what that entails. We'll then do the compliance piece. And then we'll also get a chance to do the Q&A, where if you have any questions or clarifications, I'll be happy to respond. And then we'll do the closure, where we'll just do a quick recap, any closing remarks, and then also any responses that you might have on the same. I'm seeing some conversations in the chat. Is everyone able to hear us? I hope so. Okay, great. I was just seeing a lot of communication here. All right, then. So let's keep going. So I love quotes, and you'll see this quite often in my presentations. In particular, I just wanted to share this one, which I think is quite apt, where Alvin Toffler, who's a thinker around business and management, says, the literate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read and write, but those who cannot learn and relearn. And I think this is a very important kind of a quote in the context of what we're doing today, because quite often, as we do our jobs, as we do our work and we run our businesses, it's very easy to get caught up in a routine and a way of doing things that becomes kind of outdated. And yet maybe the consumer has changed. We know in Kenya, for instance, that the pandemic changed everything when it came to things digital. And we want to make sure that the approaches and the methodologies and the way we're approaching the market is consistent with the fact that we need to also upskill and change our skills. And hence we need to learn and relearn so that we are well equipped to succeed in this new digital first context. As we move into our introduction, I think it's important to sort of define what is digital marketing. And one of the definitions here is that it's the promotion of brands via one or more digital media. Digital marketing is also different from traditional marketing because it involves using channels and methods that enable your organization or you as an individual, as an agent, to analyze campaigns, understand what is working and what isn't, typically in real time. And this is very powerful because imagine if you have a budget of, let's say, 10,000 shillings a month to advertise online, and suddenly you're not able to see the results you expect. That means you can actually stop the campaign, see what's working and not working, and then go back, refine, improve, correct whatever was not done properly so that you get the results that you need. So unlike traditional media, it gives you that opportunity to be reactive and be able to do things in a more real-time manner. You also find that it enables things like, understanding what's being viewed, how often and for how long. Also, when you're looking at your results, you'll have a clear picture of what is working and not working. And this is probably one of the most powerful aspects of digital, the ability to see with no ambiguous way what is actually performing when it comes to your activities. But what is driving uptake of digital marketing globally and not just in Kenya? Number one, sales. I think this is the one probably most of you are interested in. Can it be a key platform for sales? Number two, marketing, where you want to just make sure people know you exist. One of the biggest problems in small businesses today is obscurity. If people don't even know you exist, how can they buy from you? So if digital marketing gives you an opportunity to be seen and heard, then definitely brand visibility is high priority. Service delivery, it's not just about selling or marketing, but even servicing our customers better. Again, if we're able to talk to them on platforms like Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and so forth, sometimes in the DM, because again, that's where some people are preferring to communicate, it allows us to deliver better service to our customers. And then efficiency and effectiveness. As far as I know, there is no other form of marketing that's as cost effective and as impactful as digital marketing, meaning that not only is it giving you higher return on investment, but it's very efficient and effective. You can be very precise and you can actually save money at the same time as you increase your revenue. So if we break it down, we often talk about marketing being above the line or below the line. Digital marketing is none of those. It does not obey the line. It tends to be cost efficient, especially if you know what you're doing, can be broadcast and personalized. And we'll go into a little bit of this when we go into our content section. It always provides a return on investment. It's very easy to measure that I spent 10,000 shillings. Possibly I closed, business worth, 2 million shillings. It's very easy to see whether or not you're achieving the desired outcome from that perspective. It can also be reactive as well as proactive, meaning that unlike other medias or traditional media, it gives you that flexibility. Ultimately, when you do this properly, a digital strategy gives you a plan which allows you to then reach your audience in a tailored way to maximize your return on investment. If you're doing this properly, it's vital you focus on what you want to communicate, who you want to communicate it to, and how you're going to communicate it. Now, this is important because you'll probably find that as you're selling your products and services, you might have customers who are in their 20s, you might have customers who are in their 50s. Chances are in a digital world, they're not using the same platforms, and the style and tone of communication is going to be different when you're talking to these people. Maybe when you're talking to a 25-year-old, you're using a lot of sheng and using language that is familiar and comfortable for them. When you're speaking to an older person who's maybe 50 plus, you're probably using normal English in a sort of a clean way of communicating. So remember, as you're sort of targeting, it's not just about one size fits all. You need to think about who you're speaking to and how you're speaking to them. And then the audiences are coming to via multiple digital channels, whether it's a website, social media, they might be using their mobile phone, a tablet, maybe even their TV. And the idea is that you want to make sure you're fully accessible across all these different touch points. So typically, when we think about channels in terms of digital marketing, we talk about owned, paid, and earned media. In owned media, we talk about a channel that you completely control. So things like your website, maybe you have a blog, maybe you have a mobile app, maybe you have email, maybe you have a podcast. Those are channels that you're fully enabled to control within your own remit, meaning that you're not in any way restricted from using it. When it comes to paid media, this is where you pay for the privilege of being seen and heard, meaning you're probably running ads on platforms like Google or Facebook. You're paying for things like paid search, and you might be paying for content sponsorships, where, for instance, you work with an influencer and they then carry your message or your marketing on your behalf. And then we have earned media, which is one of the most powerful forms of media if you're able to achieve it, where we talk about content becoming viral, people finding your content because somebody shared it. And this is probably one of the most cost-effective ways of marketing, where perhaps the content is clever, entertaining, or interesting enough so that people actually just start to share it. And the beauty about this, again, is that it's almost like the gift that keeps on giving if more and more people share your content. When it comes to defining kind of like how digital works versus traditional media, there's specific characteristics that are really important to note. So for instance, in digital, we see that the richness of the media is very high, pretty much like TV today. It tends to be very interactive relative to other media, meaning that sometimes even in a matter of seconds, you put out a post and you start getting feedback, comments, likes, and so forth. It also gives us the ability, especially using advertising, to target our audience very, very precisely. Meaning that, for instance, I can say that I'm looking for people in Nangata who went to university, who have, children who are in primary school. You can target an audience to that level of precision using digital marketing. The investment of a contact, what it actually costs you to reach and engage potential customers, is much, much lower than other medias, literally down to cents on the shilling if you do this right. So meaning that you can really amplify your reach and also engagement without having to spend a lot of money per contact that you make. Measurability tends to be very high, usually meaning that you can know within a day or a week whether or not your campaign is performing well, whether or not your social media is delivering value. And then lastly, return on investment, if done right. Remember, the word is if done right, generally tends to be high, all right, compared to every other kind of media that's available to you. When it comes to our current situation in terms of how digital is being consumed in this country, you can see that we're talking about over 54,000 mobile subscriptions and then over 39.6 internet subscriptions. And we can see that broadband, which is basically smartphones, over 22 million subscriptions. This means that we're looking at potentially over 30 million people in the country who are online. And you can see there that internet subscriptions are predominantly mobile based. This means that if you're creating content and trying to reach your audience at scale, you need to contemplate that, first of all, it's mostly mobile. And that means, again, you need to make sure your content and the way you communicate is ideally for a mobile first consumer. We can also see here some statistics from We Are Social, just giving us again some of the penetration numbers. And you can see again, their numbers are about 22.7 million people, but also suggesting that social media users are 13.5 million. That's a number I dispute because I think pretty much anyone who's online is going to be on social anyway. So I'd probably say it's closer to the higher number. We can also see again different statistics coming from different locations, including the Communications Authority, giving us a sense that there's about 49.36 million people. That's the number that they have out of a population, therefore 88.7%. These are some other numbers from Statista, and the ones I want to show you here that I think are really critical. Number one, WhatsApp is, as a social media, because of the groups nowadays, has more than 36.1% in terms of this research. And then we can see that TikTok, according to this research, is now bigger than Instagram. Now, this is important because some people still have the opinion that TikTok is just for young people and therefore is not mainstream. But the numbers over here suggest that actually TikTok is now bigger than Instagram. And then Facebook, while still big, according to this data, is now showing us that it's even smaller than Instagram. And again, this is based on research and sort of surveys of consumers. But the bottom line is, when you start to look at these numbers, you start to understand where you might want to start investing more of your efforts. Places like TikTok, Instagram. How can you use WhatsApp to also communicate and market yourself more effectively? Because according to the data, those are the platforms that are most popular with consumers in Kenya. Again, this is the same information, and you can just see how this is all stacking up. WhatsApp at the top, TikTok. We can see Facebook, Instagram, and then you have X, Telegram, and so forth. Again, here we're just seeing some more numbers, and I'm going to come to another data set. And this is again just showing us that when it comes to LinkedIn here, almost 5 million users, and you can see that the 18 to 24 and then the 25 to 34 are the biggest groups that are on LinkedIn. When it comes to Facebook, again, although they tell us Facebook is no longer for young people, the numbers suggest that Facebook has 38% 18 to 24, and then the 25 to 34, 34.6%. Possibly the most interesting on this slide is the slide where it shows the 65 plus, which is 2.1, 2.2%, which is higher than the 55 to 64. And this suggests to me that even older people are indeed using Facebook in the country, meaning that it's a good place to reach some of those potential customers who are a bit older. And equally so on Instagram, we see again the 65 group seems to be, again, more than even the 55 to 64. So I think this sort of challenges maybe our notions around older people using social media. But then also when you look at the aggregate numbers, you can see, Facebook 17 million, Instagram 3, Messenger 14, and LinkedIn about 5. So according to this data set, Facebook is still the largest. Again, we can see from this data that WhatsApp is the biggest, followed by TikTok and then Instagram. And then this is yet another source of data. And you can see again, people are really big on WhatsApp, TikTok. And then we can see also Facebook as well, Instagram and Twitter. Again, we just see some numbers here that are interesting. And I think the one that I really wanted to show you here that I think is very compelling is the one that says that the average consumer in Kenya is spending 3 hours and 43 minutes a day on social media. Now, this is very, very profound because it means that even though we're doing emails, browsing, and all these things, when it comes to digital consumption, by far, almost 4 hours of our time is spent on social media platforms. And each user is using approximately 5.7 different platforms. So just looking at those two statistics, you can see that this is where the predominant amount of time we're spending online is on socials. And then you can see over here for January, Google number 1, YouTube is the social media number 2, Facebook is number 3, WhatsApp number 4, OpenAI and a few others, Instagram, LinkedIn. But the point being here that within the top 20, I think we have almost 10 different social media visible. What do people actually want to do, and what are they doing? Chat and messaging, social networks are the highest activities. So that means, of course, WhatsApps and the likes are probably right at the top, with the Telegrams, followed by the social media networks. That's where consumers are spending all their time. Devices used, as mentioned previously, 100% mobile. That is where the majority of consumption is happening. Um, and then this is a statistic I got from 2 years ago when there was a big outage of WhatsApp. And the point I wanted to emphasize here is that you can see on this deck that South Africa, uh, Nigeria, and I think that's Egypt. No, South Africa, Nigeria, and Kenya are the three countries where it went red when there was a big outage. So this again is just giving us confirmation that what's up in this country, amongst all the countries in Africa, only three countries went red, and Kenya was one of them. So we can't ignore that at all. Another thing that's changing the market is the fact that most consumers today are buying these cheaper phones, going down for 3,500 shillings. And this is how the majority of consumers today, within the lower demographics, are getting online. It means that basically the phone has become a basic human right. It's just like I like to share on a personal story when we had a person joining our home as one of our helpers. And the first thing she asked for when she came in on day one was, what is the Wi-Fi password? So I think another thing that we'll have to note is that, today's modern situation in Kenya is that everyone wants to be online. Another thing that we see is that everyone is now connecting through fiber to the home. There's a lot of affordable providers, people like Mawingu, people like Poa Internet. Safaricom has gotten much cheaper packages recently. We're seeing the stories about Starlink, but basically these 100 always connected internet connections in the home are now becoming quite predominant, and people are using all sorts of devices to connect to them. And then you can see the different price points, the different speeds. And this is just showing us that people are very connected in the home, which changes their behavior. So they're consuming, they're connected, they're streaming content. And this means that we have a very big potential market for our content. Another thing that's important to note is how much video is being consumed online. And this data here is telling us that 82% of consumer internet is now video. Now, this is important because as you create content, consider the fact that the majority of consumers are preferring to consume video versus written content, meaning that it's up to you as an agent to create videos, whether it's on formats like TikTok. I see many videos where somebody puts a camera on their dashboard and they're explaining 5 things about something important, or they're saying 3 things you need to know about this. The fact that that is video means that there's a higher probability it's going to be consumed versus any other kind of content you're going to create. And therefore, whether it's using TikTok, whether it's YouTube Shorts, whether it's Reels, whether it's actually shooting, content in a studio, the reality is that consumer internet is 82% video. So that means that you need to find a way of creating content that shares your thought leadership and your expertise in a video format. And again, you can see the data here. 94.5% are saying they want or don't mind consuming any kind of video, which I think is a bit hilarious. But it just goes to show you that people really, really like video in Kenya. Online privacy is also a big issue. Like I mentioned earlier, you can see that consumers have genuine concerns about what's fake or not. They also decline cookies, 42%. We are seeing basically a market where people do care about their data privacy. And of course, as you interact and start engaging people digitally, you need to make sure that you're paying attention. So GDPR and also the Kenya Data Protection Act, these are some of the laws that are now in place. GDPR is incredibly punitive. We've seen companies like Meta and Google are paying billions of dollars in fines. Not that that would come to you necessarily, but right here in Kenya, I think we can see what's happening. Another big trend that you need to pay attention to is what we call first-party data. What that basically means is that in the past, it was easy to use these platforms to run advertising, but because of data privacy concerns and the fines that I've just mentioned, it is now incumbent upon you as the agent to start building up what we call your first-party data. And what that basically means is make sure that you have the customers' numbers, email addresses, phone numbers, and so forth, so that without necessarily relying on a digital platform, you have that data in your control. But of course, when you do this, you must make sure that you're also registered to do so, because in Kenya, you have to be registered with the Office of the Data Protection Commissioner. I think it costs about 5,000 shillings, and you can register as a data controller. And we'll go a little bit more into this later so that you can see how this works. Also, podcasts are becoming incredibly popular in the country. This is some of the content and the research that we've seen. 18 to 44 make up 67% of the podcast audience. And this is interesting because obviously, if you're trying to communicate and market yourself as an agent and you have advice or recommendations, podcasting could be a very powerful way for you to reach the market as well. And we can see that podcasting itself as a space is also growing dramatically globally. By the end of the year, we should have 500 million podcasts globally. And the trajectory is quite impressive in terms of how it's growing going forward. So the things that I think are most critical to understand about digital marketing are these. Number one, social media is where consumers live online. Do not disregard this. Do not ignore it. Make sure that is your number one priority. It means that, yes, it's fantastic to have websites. Websites are still important. You still need to use them. But if there's one place where you can win and win big, it's on social media. Number two, if you're creating content, remember that it's mobile. People are consuming things on a mobile interface. So create content and marketing that takes that into consideration. Content in itself drives both conversions and conversations. And we'll go a little bit more into this when we go into the next sections. And then extensive use of video and visual content. Okay, so video and anything visual is what audiences are consuming the most online. And then user experience, how easy it is to navigate. Maybe you create an infographic, maybe you create carousels. How easy is it for people to see what you're communicating and understand it, which is ultimately what we call user experience, is also very, very important. And of course, here I've just put a small sentence in emoji, which actually says good morning. And again, the point I'm trying to make here is that even as you communicate on these platforms, consider the dialect of the platform. Think about the way you might communicate on TikTok is different maybe from Instagram a little bit. LinkedIn is what we call Facebook with a suit and tie. How do you make sure that your communications are fit for platform? Again, the idea is that it's not one size fits all in terms of platforms, but also in terms of audiences. So being sort of customized or specific to each platform is incredibly important for your marketing to work well. So now we're going to customer profiling, which I think is one of the more critical components of today, because I believe it builds the foundation for everything else. And this is really thinking about how do we create an ideal customer journey? A customer journey basically is how we go from awareness to conversion and retention in regards to how we win our customers through digital marketing, but also how we retain them and hopefully they become advocates for us, as it were, as agents. So the first thing you need to think about is, how do we figure out how do these people become aware of who we are and where we are? What is it that we offer? Why would they choose us over somebody else? The second thing is the moment of conversion, when they actually decide to become a customer or actually decide to sign up for what it is that we're selling. And then lastly, we have our retention piece, which is once we bring them in, how do we keep them on platform? How do we keep them engaging with us so that when they're ready for their renewals or they're looking to buy other types of insurance, they're definitely there with us for additional new sales. So typically, when you think about our customer journey, this is how it might look. It might be because we did some advertising on, Facebook or Google. Maybe we have a mobile app. Maybe it's our website. Maybe it's email marketing. That's another way we can reach customers. But of course, for purposes of our training, we're looking at social media. They'll then access our content on these various platforms. And what might happen is two things, either an online or offline transaction, meaning that if we have a way of people paying us through the internet, or maybe we have a pay bill or a digital form of payment, that would happen online. Or maybe it's them coming to us and giving us a check. That could be another form of transaction. And that ultimately then culminates in our conversion. As this happens, one of the things that we need to pay attention to is that many times the customer journey starts on one device but ends on another. So maybe they saw it as an ad on the phone, and another day they're on their tablet, another day they're on their their computer, and that's how it might be. But also what we find is that quite often these customer journeys are not exactly straight. It might take a number of impressions. It might happen over a month. It might happen over 2 months. But this person is seeing our ads, is engaging our content. They saw a social media post. There's sort of zigzag going on until eventually they have that moment where they say, yes, they are ready to buy our product or service. So quite often we talk about something called the marketing funnel when we think about digital marketing. And this is really the stages upon which our business is actually able to bring in customers. The most important piece is the top of the funnel, which is the awareness. And like I mentioned before, if you're obscure, if people can't even see you, they can't hear you, they don't know where you are, then they can't buy from you. So one of the critical steps is just being seen and heard. Yeah, at this point in time, we're not necessarily in a position to actually sell, but we're just creating awareness. Number two, engagement. That is them engaging with our content, maybe joining our page, connecting with us, seeing our videos, etc. And then we have the moment of conversion when they choose to actually become customers. And then down the road, as we retain them, we need to start thinking about what sort of content do we continue publishing so that they can stay and actually eventually become advocates for us. Yeah, so conversions are really what are achieved after the customer journey. And you got to understand, how does the customer journey start and end? And different customers will always convert in different ways. Some people are going to do it offline or online. Some people are going to happen on TikTok. Others will happen on LinkedIn. It could also depend on the class of insurance you're selling. Is it something personal? Is it business? All these factors ultimately may impact the determination of when and how that conversion will actually happen. And this means that we need to master the customer journey. We need to understand from initial awareness to them becoming advocates for our insurance agency, what are those key steps, all right? And map the points or the critical touch points that are going to determine how this is going to happen. So we need to improve our communication, customer satisfaction, and of course, awareness leading to conversion. Sorry. So if we move forward, first of all, we need to understand the customer journey. Again, we always talk about the key steps of awareness, consideration, decision, retention, and advocacy. Not to worry, I'll show you a simulation of what that looks like. We need to look at the key digital marketing principles. And this is, again, looking at the various tools and platforms and messaging that we're going to put on our touch points. We need to look at the touch points and the opportunities that they present. We also need to create actionable journey maps. We'll look at that in a moment. And then also strategic marketing plans, looking at how we build our plans out so that we can boost customer engagement and also build lasting loyalty. When you start looking at that map, it's really a visual representation of all the steps the customer takes to becoming a client or customer. So we want to simplify the complexity and also see how they interact with us. The idea is that you should not use a rigid one-size-fits-all, but you need to think about the different types of customers and how they're going to connect with your brand and with your business. And more importantly, the different demographics and also individual customer personas, which we'll see in a moment. So first of all, we need to understand the stages. How does this person go through the different steps? Where are they touching us, so to speak? Is it our blog, our social media? Maybe it's search engine, maybe it's our website. Think about the touch points that are most relevant to each stage. And then we need to think through what we call the full customer experience. What are their actions, motivations, pain points? What are the reasons why they're coming forward and indicating that they're interested in a product or service? And then, of course, your brand or your agency solutions. What are the things that you have that are relevant to them to actually purchase from you as an agent? So the first step to do this is really to understand who are our personas. And again, this is something you already know. You already deal with a different, probably quite a diverse range of customers. Some are young, some are old, some are buying specific products. Maybe some are only with you for motor insurance. Maybe some are there for health insurance. Maybe some of them are SMEs, so they're buying business insurance. But you got to understand who these people are and where they are and what it is that sort of guides them in terms of making that decision. So you want to analyze your customer data. Again, this could be stuff that you already have on a spreadsheet somewhere, or maybe you even have some kind of a CRM. You need to look at the specific categories, the groups that they fit in. And this could be based on the products or services that you sell, or it could be based on the age segments, the different age groups that you're engaging with. And you want to build out these personas so that you know at a minimum what are the typical traits and what makes them who they are in terms of their decisions. So when you kind of want to define your personas, you need to understand the segments, define the demographics, their values and beliefs. Ideally, you get to know your persona, meaning that you actually create almost a visual of this person and how they look, the value they get from you, give them a face and a name, and then you share your personas and you find them over time. And the reason for this is that because you're not doing a one-size-fits-all, you're creating different customer journeys for different types of customers. So let's look at some examples. This is John Mwangi. He's a young professional. He's 28 years old. He's a software engineer. He's making 100,000 a month. He's in Nairobi. He's single, living in a rented apartment. What are his insurance needs? He's looking to cover medical expenses, personal accident cover for emergencies, and he's beginning to think about life insurance for future family planning. So his customer journey is probably at the research phase. He's seeking information on affordable health and life insurance options that align with his budget, and he's also tech savvy and prefers digital platforms for his research on communication. And chances are when you look at your customer portfolio, you probably have a John Mwangi somewhere, somebody who has similar attributes to the one that we're seeing here. And then we have Grace Wanjiku, who's a family-oriented parent. She's 40 years old. She's a high school teacher. She's making 175,000 shillings a month. She lives in Nakuru. She's married with 2 children, ages 10 to 6, and owns a family home. She's looking for comprehensive health insurance for her and her family. She wants insurance, education plans for children, and she also wants home insurance to protect their property. So she's in the consideration phase. She's comparing family health covers and education plans, and she's interested in long-term stability and plans to protect her family's future through savings and insurance products. Then here we have Samuel Otieno, who's a business owner. So this is sort of your classic SME. He owns a logistics company. He's making 500,000 a month. He lives in Kisumu. His life stage is married with 2 grown-up children in college, and he's looking for commercial vehicle insurance. He's also looking for health and life insurance, and he also wants a retirement plan and investment-linked insurance. So in the decision-making phase, he's ready to purchase commercial insurance for his business, exploring retirement plans for his family's security, and he values face-to-face interaction and also detailed explanations, but uses online tools for comparison. So again, this is somebody who's a bit older, but he's also using technology to sort of make some of his purchase decisions when it comes to insurance. And then we have Janet Mudhoni, who's a retiree. She's a retired doctor. She's making about 150,000 shillings a month from pension. She's in Mombasa. She's widowed with 1 grown-up son. She's looking at health insurance to cover age-related medical costs, retirement investment plan to supplement her pension, and life insurance for final expenses and to leave something for her son. So she's in a purchasing phase. She's seeking a stable and reliable health insurance that covers chronic conditions, but also she's looking at simplifying her retirement investments. So these are 4 different personas that, again, according to the different types of insurance propositions, could be potentially one of your customers. So when it comes to, again, looking at the 5 stages of the customer journey, we need to think about, first of all, awareness, right? So advertising, social media, blog posts, podcast, all of these activities that potentially will create awareness. Consideration could be emails where now you start engaging one-on-one with somebody, sales calls, SMS, landing pages, and reviews. And then the purchase could be happening on a website, could be happening in person, could be happening through M-Pesa. And then, of course, you're using retargeting ads and the likes. And then you have retention, things where, thank you emails, product walkthroughs, sales follow-ups, and also social media communities. And then you have also advocacy, where we start to see what is the feedback, how do we change, how do we improve things. And these are where we use surveys, loyalty programs, and also in-person meetings. So when we come to map our touch points, we need to first of all understand, for the customer journey map, what are the actions that a customer takes at each phase? What are the common patterns that we know? Chances are you already know these things. You just possibly may not have documented them. What are their motivations? What are the reasons why they're moving from stage to stage? And the purchase stage is really, maybe it might be just to get the lowest price possible. What are the questions, that maybe a potential customer is asking at consideration? Like, what's the difference between 2 types of insurance policies? Maybe they look quite similar, but you are then there to advise them on the difference. And this content, again, could offer answers to them while promoting your services as an agent. And then the pain points, again, recognizing their pain points. What are the things that usually frustrate or prove challenging for your customers? And then using that to sort of drive the next steps. So typically, we want to optimize the customer experience. We want to make sure that we're providing customers with personalized, relevant, and meaningful content across our social media platforms. So that means we need to prioritize our objectives, and that means where we have the strongest presence, we can take advantage of those points. So we also want to make sure we're omni-channel, so we're cutting across all the platforms. We also want to personalize those interactions at every stage. And also we want to cultivate a mutually trusting relationship with our stakeholders. I'm going to just skip this because of time, but this is a sample customer map stroke journey for insurance. And you can see here in awareness, the touch point in this case could be insurance brokers. The customer action is engaging with insurance brokers for guidance. The experience is maybe they're interested but hesitant. The pain point, which is something, again, that we see a lot in insurance, a lack of transparency in pricing and coverage. And then a potential solution, meaning providing transparent pricing and policy information. In the consideration phase, they're going to consult with an agent. They're going to meet with insurance agents for guidance. They're going to be curious and excited. And then the pain points, time consuming and limited availability. And the solution is to offer flexible appointment options and efficient service. Decisioning, the touch point is the phone or in-person assistance, which is something that you already do. Seeking assistance on phone or in person. The experience is the excitement. Long wait times are the issue, and unhelpful customer service. So we focus on improving customer service response times and staff training. When it comes to service, again, health and wellness programs, participating in health and wellness programs, the experience could be frustration, pain points are lack of awareness and engagement. Potential solution, promote health and wellness programs and provide incentives. And then lastly, loyalty. This is the renewal and plan updates, reviewing and renewing health insurance plans. The experience could be satisfied and happy. Pain points, lack of clarity in plan updates and changes, which we all know happens from time to time, and clearly communicate plan updates and changes to customers. This is like a template that you can also use to create your own customer journey map. But I want to also share with you an example of kind of what that process might look like. So typically in awareness, the customer becomes aware of the insurance agent services. The objective is to capture attention, build trust, and generate awareness. The key tactics in this case would be social media ads. If you have a website, making sure your content can be found on search engine optimization. So posts like why life insurance is important for young professionals or best education plans for your children. This is content you can create and publish online. And then video content, maybe similar content, short videos that you can put on TikTok, YouTube shorts and so forth. And then also educational webinars like the one we're having today. And the persona example here is John Mwangi, who we just looked at, comes across a sponsored post on Instagram about affordable health insurance options for young professionals. He clicks through to learn more. In consideration, this is where they're evaluating different insurance options and agents. And the objective here is to provide information solutions to persuade the customer that your services best meet their needs. So the tactic here is retargeting ads. We'll talk a little bit about this when we get to this section, where ads are shown to people who've visited your website before. Product comparison pages, using customer testimonials, which is what we call social proof, and maybe even use email campaigns to communicate with them. And a persona example here would be Grace Wanjiku. This is the lady based in Nakuru looking for education insurance policies. And then we have in decision, a customer is ready to make a purchase decision. Here's where we make it easy for the customer to get a quote or book a consultation with us. So things like instant quote tools, live chat, maybe discounted offers, and also virtual consultations where you can go online and talk to them. And this could be somebody like Samuel Otieno, the businessman from Kisumu, could be using this as a way during this particular phase. And then you have the onboarding stage where the customer has made a purchase and needs to be onboarded smoothly. This is very important. So things like, a thank you email. Again, this is something that maybe is not appreciated enough, but customers do appreciate these things. Video tutorials showing them how to move forward, and maybe customer support, giving them a way of contacting you 24/7. And Janet Mudhoni would be, again, the retiree who could benefit from this. Then you have the retention stage where you want to keep the customer engaged, satisfied, and open to additional products and services. Again, we're in the business of selling, so we want to make sure we can give them as many solutions as possible. So things like personalized emails, loyalty programs, engaging them regularly on social media, sharing helpful tips, and also, policy review calls, checking in with them to make sure that they're satisfied with their coverage, and you can offer recommendation for adjustments. And this could be, again, relevant to somebody like Grace Wanjiku, who's the parent from Nakuru. And then in the advocacy stage, this is again above and beyond them becoming customers and retaining them, is how the customer can become a brand advocate for you. So things like referral programs, maybe you build a solution that allows them to refer friends and family to you as an agent. Review requests, ask them to leave reviews on Google, Facebook, and other platforms recommending you. And then also social media shoutouts where you can actually post something saying, this is our happy customer and the solution that we provided to them, of course, with their consent. And this is maybe somebody like Samuel Otieno who would be able to do that for you. But that in a nutshell gives you some sense of how the customer journey process works. Again, you will get a copy of this presentation from Hazel, and you'll be able to kind of see how this works specifically or can be customized to your unique requirements. Again, as we look at all the touch points, we could have a website. Maybe some of you have a website already. So things like your blogs, frequently asked questions, landing pages, and calculators. Email could be a very important touch point. Social media, of course, is the core one. Paid ads, Google ads, Facebook ads, all of these. And then webinars and videos, live chat, and even SMSs or WhatsApp communications could also be another very powerful place for providing a touch point. We'll now move into social media marketing. Again, in the interest of time, we're a little bit behind. I'm just going to skip this as well, just because of time. But what is social media? It's conversations, it's platforms, it's content, right? So basically the places where we have the conversations, the platforms where they happen, and the content that actually sits on each and every one of these platforms. When it comes to how it works, we know that social media has become incredibly popular, both for entertainment, information, and conversations, as well as e-commerce. Platforms like TikTok have become very popular, especially after the pandemic, social gaming, and of course, Twitter X Spaces for audio-based social media, as we've seen recently in this country. This is, again, what we think is our reasonable estimate of the number of people online in the country. We think it's definitely over 30 million at this point. Surprisingly, YouTube is the biggest in terms of overall consumption. But in terms of engagement and other activities, Facebook is still massive. And of course, TikTok, as we know, is now apparently surpassed even Instagram. Social media, again, you find that content is king. So what we create, what we publish, whether it's audio, video, blogs, has become a key component of how organizations are connecting with their stakeholders. So the ability to create content and the capabilities and facilities are incredibly important for this reason. Also, engaging social media communities. Remember, we talked about advocacy and also retention. For me, this is where communities play a huge role, because not only do we keep our social communities connected to our brand, but also at the same time, we also use this as a way of continuing to sort of create advocacy and even potentially win more business as a result of maintaining a community. So it's not enough to just sell to them. It's also about having conversations and engaging. We also see that social media increasingly has become 5 screens, meaning that everything from our watches all the way to TVs are now places where people are interacting on social media. And what are some of the key benefits? It's got reach and scalability. You can have one person reaching millions of people. It's highly accessible. It's highly usable, meaning you don't have to require technical skills. It's instant in the way you communicate, and also can be altered almost instantaneously. In traditional media, we see that it was, print, TV, and radio. It was very monologue. It was very expensive. You had to be very highly skilled to use it, very bureaucratic. Business models having issues, as we know, even in Kenya, accountability for outputs, and of course, it's globally a declining industry in many cases. But in social media, we're able to move from monologues to dialogue, so it's very conversational. It democratizes information, transforming people from readers to publishers. Very popular, as we can connect to our stakeholders both on a personal and business basis, and it's growing much faster than traditional media. In traditional, we saw organization controls everything, very monologue, very repetitive, focused on the organization, very much about educating, and the advertiser drives the content. In social, we see that the audience is in control. It's a dialogue back and forth, hence social media. We adapt the message, we focus on the audience, we influence and involve our stakeholders, and we also use a lot of user-generated content, or what we call co-creation. The key platforms, generally, you have Facebook giving us large scale, we have Twitter giving us conversation, LinkedIn for professional networking, the likes of TikTok and Instagram for photos and videos, as well as YouTube. And then, of course, you have Snapchat for vertical and ephemeral storytelling. So when you come to platforms like LinkedIn, this is really the professional place for social media. People publish their resumes, but it's also a very powerful place for sharing content and information. And at least 35 million job seekers every week are on this platform. Globally, about 675 million people access LinkedIn's massive member network. So typically, you want to have a LinkedIn dedicated strategy. Most of the content is going to be thought leadership here. This is where you're able to do the long form content, advice, tips, recommendations on insurance things. You can also join and start LinkedIn groups. This is another powerful way to build a community. And then also posting less frequently, 4 to 5 times a week is perfectly okay. But generally, the content is of an educational manner. And what we say on LinkedIn is don't focus on selling so much, but focus on educating and teaching and showing people what can work for them. Less of selling, more of information and education. And then you have connections, which is the people who are connected to you. You have company pages, which are different from your individual pages. And you want to make sure that your agency has a specific one. You can also pay for a subscription to get more features and capabilities. And more importantly, a LinkedIn group, or creating maybe a LinkedIn group for insurance, could be something powerful for you. So you can go to linkedin.com, click on the work section, select the kind of business you want to create a page for, add your company and details, check the verification box, and you create your page. This can be done in as little as 5 minutes, meaning that if you're currently not on LinkedIn, you can do so in a short period of time. Facebook, of course, is the biggest social media platform, 3 billion users globally. That's a third of the world's population. There are over 65 million businesses on Facebook pages, and more than 6 million advertisers promote their businesses on Facebook. Again, 94% of Facebook's users access via mobile app. So in this instance, you want to have a specific Facebook strategy. We also highly recommend you go live on Facebook regularly. Why this is so is because when you go live, anyone who's following you as a business will get a notification that you're live. And that is an opportunity to engage, an opportunity potentially to sell. Share helpful resources, create and share more entertaining posts, so less formal than what we saw on LinkedIn. Posting 4 or 5 times a week is fine. And very important because we got to call organic reach, the way that people can see your content on Facebook is very minimal. So you want to buy ads to increase the reach, engagement, and also conversions via your Facebook page. So you obviously have profiles. These are for non-commercial use, and that's what you normally use as an individual. You then have pages, which is what you then create using a profile, and that's for your business or your agency. You can use Facebook ads or meta ads, as they're called these days. You can also create events if you want to engage your stakeholders through events. And of course, the live feature that you can run even on your phone to do live content. Another very, very, very important component of Facebook or Meta is something called Meta Business Suite. And this is basically a dashboard that allows you to connect your Facebook, Messenger, and Instagram on one place, but also connect it to your WhatsApp account. So the beauty about this is that Meta has basically built a platform that allows you to handle all these from one common dashboard. And what I've seen with many small businesses in my experience, many have not taken advantage of this. So it's a free tool. You can centralize everything, your messaging, your communication, your advertising, one complete dashboard just for that. You can post across platforms, so you can post on both Facebook and Instagram. You can read all your messages in the inbox, including WhatsApp. You can create ads, track your trends and insights, see all activity, and also access helpful tools. Then we have Twitter or X, depending on what you want to refer to it as. As we saw in the statistics, it's not as big as we see with, say, Facebook or even LinkedIn. But what is interesting is that it is still very popular for real-time content. I'm going to skip the video because of time, but you also want to have a Twitter or X specific strategy. One of the things you can do is have what they call tweet chats, where people can ask you questions. You can do what they call an ask me anything. You can also, of course, do a Twitter space or an X space for real-time conversation. You can retweet helpful resources. You don't have to create all the content, and also search for conversations and topics and people to follow. So tweets obviously is what we post. Retweeting is when we retweet somebody's message. We can quote a tweet. TweetDeck is another feature that is useful. Unfortunately, it's no longer available on the free version. So if you pay the Twitter Blue monthly package, you can still get access to it. It costs about $10 a month. And then also you can geotag your content. Then you have moments, mute words, Twitter trends. I'm sure all of you are familiar with trending topics. And then, of course, Twitter cards. So this is what your TweetDeck looks like as an interface. If you do pay for your Twitter account, it helps you manage your Twitter content a little bit easier, a little bit better, and you can access the content through this. You also have Twitter Spaces where you can hold conversations with audio only. And again, we've proven or seen that these have become very popular. You as an agent can start hosting insurance talks and conversations within an audio chat room. And I think this is something that definitely you should explore as one of the more informal ways of sharing knowledge. And it might be a weekly thing that you do, but people can come in and maybe ask you questions. And by virtue of that and having those conversations or topics, potentially it opens the door to doing business. Then we have Instagram, which has a legacy of being a photo and video sharing platform, very, very popular with the young people, and especially nowadays with Reels, which competes with TikTok. It's one of the world's fastest growing social media platforms. And the social media approach here is generally great content, both video and audio, video and static images. You definitely want to use things like stories and reels because they get more engagement, although stories, of course, expire after 24 hours. I'm going to switch that because we want to sort of look at how you use your terminology here. There's the activity, there's search and explore, there's filters for images. You can regram and you can also go live. We also have Instagram Reels, which essentially similar to TikToks. And then this content again is very, very popular nowadays. So you want to make sure that you're also creating Reels, because also the algorithm within the platform is prioritizing the visibility of Reels over posts. And then you also have live rooms and lives. You can also go live and have conversations and share things just like you can on, say, Twitter Spaces. But of course, the difference being that this would also incorporate video. And I'm pretty sure that you guys have also seen that before. And then, of course, you have stories, which are very popular generally across every major platform. Another great place for sharing content on these platforms. One more thing I think I forgot to mention about Instagram is there's a business profile and individual profile. So you want to make sure that if your agency is currently sitting on an individual profile, you want to make sure you move it to a business profile. And the business profile then gives you access to analytics, different features and functionalities that you don't get on the individual profile. It's a simple process. Somewhere in the menu, you're able to change it and make sure that you move to the business profile. And then we have TikTok, which currently has over 1 billion users globally, over 150 million in the US. Very, very popular in terms of content. Again, it started off being a platform predominantly for the youth, but now we're seeing that it's gone completely mainstream. So for me, I'd say TikTok is probably one of the biggest hacks that you can use to maximize your reach and engagement across social media, simply because it's very easy for your content to go viral there. And more importantly, even in Kenya, we have users who have 3, 4, 5, 6 million followers. So if you're able to create good content and you don't have to use any fancy equipment, you can actually do really well on TikTok without necessarily spending a lot of money. And again, you can sort of feature music, you can be part of challenges. You don't have to dance on TikTok, by the way. You can create your own short videos that are just focusing on you talking. And provided you prepare the content in the right way, people will see it. You can also use things like challenges and duets to do sort of connecting with other stakeholders. And this, again, is yet another way of creating interesting content on TikTok. And again, here you can see some, samples of Kenyan content, most of it entertainment focused. But yeah, you can see how big it is. And then we have YouTube. YouTube is interesting because one thing that maybe people don't realize is that YouTube is the world's second biggest search engine compared to Google itself. And for this very reason, it means that if you're creating video content and putting it on YouTube, it has a very high possibility of being found. So don't just look at it as a video platform. Think of it as a search engine, because many young people, remember I talked about video, won't go to Google to even search for something. They'll go to YouTube to look for a video that answers the question they have. So if you think about YouTube as a search engine, then create videos that provide insight or thought leadership or education to your potential customers so that they can learn something about insurance that they don't know. And the more videos you create, the more chance, and you add the relevant keywords, the more chances you have of being found through organic content. And again, one of the other features of YouTube is the ability to do live streams. So you also want to explore that possibility where you can do real-time content. But again, YouTube gives you the biggest video platform in the world. And more importantly, even in Kenya, we see that over 25 million Kenyans are using this platform. So most importantly is to set up a channel where you can put your content. People can then subscribe to your channel to receive your content and alerts when you do so. The title for the video is very important. The keywords are what will be used to find that video. Tagging it also ensures that you get found for relevant keywords. And then also the description has to be very keyword rich so that people will know what you're talking about. So if you're saying, 5 tips for buying motor insurance in Kenya, that is very rich in terms of the detail. Then the thumbnail is the image that you use to cover your video. Again, very important to do this well. Now, the other feature to YouTube that has become very important in the TikTok era is YouTube Shorts. YouTube Shorts is the direct competitor to TikTok, and it allows you to make short videos as well. It's also become incredibly popular in Kenya. And what tends to happen is that although you may do a long video of 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes, you can also create these short 60-second videos, maybe with points and tips. And the beauty about that is right now the algorithm is prioritizing YouTube Shorts over long form videos. So the shorter the video, and of course, if it's designed for mobile, as you can see there, then the higher the probability the video will be found when people are looking for content on YouTube. So again, strongly encourage you to try YouTube Shorts. Within 60 seconds, create something brief and concise that captures maybe a key insight that your potential and existing customers could benefit from, and that potentially can open the door for business. Then, of course, there's Threads, which was launched last year. As we speak, it has over 200 million users globally. It's still not as popular, as far as I know, as Twitter X, which is the competitor. But what it is that whenever there's a new platform like this and it's still sort of building momentum, you want to make sure you have a presence. And quite easily, if you have an Instagram account, it's very easy to open a Threads account because they're interconnected. So also look at how you can use Threads to build your social platforms. Another aspect that I want to just talk about is digital advertising, how you can run advertising campaigns on social media. And many of them, remember, we talked about using first-party data, so advanced data, behavioral targeting, and also tracking. And you can target audiences based on where they are physically located. So I want to reach somebody in Langata. I look at their behavior. I look at maybe even their education. All of these criteria can be used as a way of targeting the right audience. So you have Meta Ads, which runs on both Facebook and Instagram. You can set a budget, you can bid, and then you can run it in the news feed or through the mobile, and people will be able to see that content. You can target in a number of ways. So for instance, you can run a campaign for awareness where people just know you exist. You can also run consideration. Remember, we talked about different phases. And then you can also run conversion types of campaigns. So again, it's beautiful in the sense that maybe your objective is just to be seen and heard. So you just want to be aware, or maybe you have a very specific offer or product, and that's where you'd push people to something like conversion. When it comes to running the ads on Facebook, you can run, or rather Meta ads, you can run, which go both on Instagram and Facebook. You can do things like carousels. You can do a single image, very easy to do. Just put an image and you put in your text. You can also do a single video. You can create slideshows. So if you have a number of pictures, you can create slideshows, canvas, and also collection. The easiest one here is the single image. And then, of course, the ads will be placed, both in the feed, and other places. Very important. Again, you can also run these ads on Messenger, which is, of course, the popular platform for messaging, both on Instagram and also on Facebook. You can run click to Messenger ads, sponsored messages, Messenger ads. And what I find very exciting when it comes to Meta is lead ads. So lead ads are very nice, and I'm sure you've seen them before, is where somebody sees your ad and can actually give you information. And most of the information is pre-populated by the platform itself, whether it's through Instagram or Facebook. So usually you get their name, their email address, their mobile number, and so forth. And the person then gives consent for you to have that information. So if you had a specific offer for a medical package, or you had an offer for motor insurance, you can run an ad and the person literally you receive their contacts, and then you can reach out to them and say, okay, I've seen your contacts, you've expressed interest in the product. How can we basically move forward with actually getting you on that policy? So the beautiful thing about this is somebody sees the ad, they express interest, they click on it, and if indeed they're ready to move forward, the form is usually pre-populated and it sends the message to you. We also have something interesting in Meta called custom audiences. So remember I talked about first-party data. If you have somebody's phone number, email address, you can actually target them on Meta using that. And the beauty about that is that if you have, for instance, a list of email addresses and phone numbers, mobile numbers that represent existing customers, you can then use that data to either target your existing customers on these platforms, or you can do something called lookalikes. And a lookalike basically is you upload your contacts to the Meta ad system, which is on Facebook or Instagram, and then the system will go and look for other people who are similar to existing customers. And this is really, really powerful, because if you do this right, the idea is that you're not just targeting anybody, you're targeting people who meet the similar characteristics of your existing customers for the relevant product or service. Again, it may not be that you're targeting all the customers that you have on your list, but you'll say, fine, these are my motor insurance customers. Give me a list, or target this ad to people who would be looking for motor insurance who meet similar criteria. It could be maybe you're targeting a home insurance category. So again, you target on that basis, or education policy. So you can actually use those contacts to kind of refine and sharpen the targeting of your advertising on these platforms. You also have your Google and search display ads. Again, Google is a very powerful advertising platform. One of the things they've done recently is they've made it much easier for most people to run ads. So they've made it less technical, a bit easier to do, and they're using a lot of AI to do this. So you can run your sponsored ads, you can do the targeting, you can show the ads to people when they're most likely to make a decision. You can also go with something called interest categories and retargeting, whereby if they don't convert in the first instance, you can keep showing them the ad until they actually convert. And that's why sometimes you might have gone to a website like Jumia and you see a fridge and you wonder for the next 2 weeks why that fridge is following you everywhere on the internet. That's what we call retargeting. So you set up your ad groups, you then set up your text ads, you choose the keywords that are going to target or show the ad when it's seen on Google Ads, and then of course the landing page or the place where you want to send them to sort of access that offer. Then you, of course, within Google Ads, we also have YouTube ads as well. So that's another possibility. Just a moment, I think I see a message here. Okay, let's keep going. So other things to consider when it comes to your ads, you want to make sure that you test the different types of ads you have. Are you using standard banners, natives, etc.? How easy is it for somebody to convert? Is it easy for them to click that button and maybe it opens something on their phone to pay with M-Pesa, or maybe it sends an email? How easy to capture the leads and so target audiences in the future? So the ability for you to remarket. And then also, can you make sure that when you're running your ads, you can make them shareable on other social media as well? Retargeting, like I mentioned earlier, is the ability to target people who didn't make a decision in the first case. So maybe they saw your ad, only 2% of people make a decision at the first instance, 98% do not. So the idea is that you want to retarget to show people your ads again and again and again, so that in time, eventually when they're ready to purchase, they'll actually get in touch with you. Another key component of this is influencer marketing. And I'm bringing this up specifically because you will find that there are influencers who are not particularly expensive, but are able to reach the audiences that you're trying to reach. And quite frankly, the idea is that you want to use them for three reasons. One, social reach, meaning that they can reach the right people. Number two, many of them have the ability to create original content that quite often you can't do yourself. And often good influencers have the trust of their communities. People trust what they have to say or recommend. So if you're a good agent and you think that, you have good credibility and you think an influencer or a range of influencers could help you reach your market, then you could also work with influencers. And why is this important? So this is just an example of something that happened some years ago when Danny Welbeck used to play for Arsenal, my team. And this was the time when Salt Bay was trending. And when he scored a goal, he went to the corner post and he sort of sprinkled in the corner. And it just shows you that influencers, basically what they do is they help people make decisions and move forward with things because they influence them. And the reason why this matters is because influencers, it's no longer what you tell the community it's about, it's what the community tell each other about. So the idea is that you use them to amplify or carry your message without you necessarily saying it yourself. And the goal is that at the bottom, you're talking about your organization. Influencers start to talk about your organization, then others start to talk about your organization. So the principal point here is that they help amplify your message to reach more people. When you're choosing influencers, if you're going to work with influencers, the number one thing is to identify who's the right one and then put them in order of importance. Again, you want influencers that you believe are speaking to the people you're trying to target, people who are relevant to the products or services you're selling, and most importantly, people who will find value in it. Number two, you want to also spend time increasing awareness of yourself or your business with the collective. And then lastly, you want to engage them, and then you want them to become advocates. There's nothing worse than an influencer who just wants the money and is not sold on what you offer. So if right now you have customers who are influencers, ideally those are the best ones to work with because they're actually your customers as a result of working with you. So these are just some examples of influencers in Kenya who are doing really well. You have Natalie Tewa, who's a lifestyle influencer. You probably know Biko Zulu, who's a renowned blogger. You have This Is S, and then you also have people like Joy Kendi. Now, these are some of the bigger ones. I'm not saying that you go with them. I'm not necessarily recommending them. I'm just showing you as examples of influencers you could work with. And when you choose influencers, you really want to find the ones who resonate with your target audience. You want to put storytelling at the heart of it. You want to give them creative license, and you also want to partner with influencers who engage with your audience regularly. So it's not about everyone and anyone. You want to find the ones who you think speak to your target market. I'm showing you a platform here called Wowzy. Wowzy is a local influencer platform. They worked very, very hard to onboard many of what we call nano influencers, people who don't cost a lot of money and don't really have large numbers. But you might find that, for instance, with a budget of, a few thousand shillings, you might find 2 or 3 influencers there who are the right fit for your product or service. And in turn, you could work with them to amplify your message. And there are many other influencer platforms, but I particularly like the approach because rather than working with, an influencer that costs you hundreds of thousands of shillings, you might find some can do a post for 5,000 shillings to maybe a market of 20,000 people. And that's good value for money, because if 3 or 4 or 5 people sign up, potentially you actually see a good ratio to conversion of the cost. But yeah, this could be one of the ways to utilize influencers. And typically when you do your influencer, campaign, you want to have some kind of a plan, how many influencers, what hashtags are you going to use? You'd want to give each influencer like a tracking code, using something like Bitly, so that you can see which influencer brought which sale or which lead. You can also give them guidelines of how many posts you want them to post per week, per day, per month. And then you kind of break it down in terms of, identification and onboarding, kicking off your campaign, working through your strategies, and of course the end of report. And this could be maybe the expected result that you want to reach 3 million people. Now, I'm not saying you're going to be looking for such big numbers, but you might want to have some kind of a plan along these lines if you ever choose to work with an influencer. Again, in the interest of time, I'm just going to keep going, and then that'll give us a bit more time in the Q&A. Content creation and marketing, I think, is a critical component of doing this well. And why is content so critical? Number one, it brings to life who you are and why you do what you do as an organization or as an individual. The content essentially is your vehicle for storytelling. It allows people to understand, why am I working with Mwangi? Why am I going with Otieno as my agent? And that storytelling and the content that you push out allows you to connect to your target audiences in a very personalized and authentic way. And more importantly, it helps you build relationships with existing and prospective customers through relatable and contextually relevant content. So the content that you're putting out on socials and so forth has to resonate. So that means the content, number one, is tightly focused on your existing and intended audiences. It is helpful, useful, and valuable content. Let me emphasize that again. Helpful, useful, and valuable content. And again, as I go back, remember I talked about thought leadership, education, those sort of themes. The content should be driven around empowering the potential or existing customer. The content can also be entertaining. Again, we'd always want to be constantly selling or just thought leadership, but can we also entertain through our content? And I'll show you some examples at the same time. And then content that is woven within storytelling, the ability for us to give a story, a narrative. Imagine using anecdotes of some of the clients you've onboarded, the experiences you've had, or a customer who benefited as a result of buying insurance through you. All those stories are very, very powerful ways of connecting with potential customers and, in fact, actually winning customers as well. I'm going to skip this because there's of time. So when it comes to this, what we want to do is, first of all, develop our content, whether it's white papers, videos, podcasts, etc. We then push this onto the relevant social media platforms. This allows us to then build our network to listen and engage. So we develop the content, we plug it into the platforms, we then build our network, listen and engage. The two things that drive social media conversations are content and connections. So we need to have good content to begin with. Good connections, meaning the network of people that are on our platforms, and that leads to conversations. And good conversations usually result in conversions. So if we look at this, then we listen, first of all, to gain insights. The best way to create social media content is not in isolation, but rather starting to understand the tone and the topics that people are discussing online. Number two, we then create the content that the conversation and the communities are going to be having, which then allows us to have the creativity to create diverse conversations with our communities. We then also look to connect with key voices and influencers. This is where we can work with people to amplify our content, and then also look at the platforms that we're working with to support these conversations. Lastly, we must have a strategy to keep our connections and conversations interesting and connected. So typically the workflow goes something like this. We want to go through acquisition, so we listen first to conversations. This then informs our content creation approach, which then allows us to create great content to grow our communities. When we move to retention, we then engage our communities to maintain and grow. Remember, we're not just pushing content at them, we're actually having a relationship with our community, and then we transform those communities into committed advocates. When it comes to the content, you need to ask yourself several questions. What is unexpected? What is timely? And what is provocative? There's so much content on social media, and people are constantly just swiping. How will they stop, and why will they stop on your content? Does it have movement and motion? That is an essential. Remember, I told you the video is so popular. Lots and lots of vibrant color, eye-catching, thumb-stopping. Are the visuals creative and eye-catching? And then also, if we can't create the content, we can also repurpose content from other sources. Also, as we do our content, think about having a content calendar so you can schedule your content on a periodic basis. You can also post helpful and engaging content, as mentioned before. If we can't create the content, we can repurpose from other sources. And then also the scheduling of your content. When do you actually publish your social media content? Because that's a critical piece in getting the right engagement. Another thing that is critical is, especially on platforms like Instagram, is using a lot of hashtags. Hashtags allow us to kind of contextualize our content. This is an example of Minnie's Bakery, and you can see here that they've used quite a few hashtags, but you'll notice that they're using hashtags like baby boy, baby girl, wedding, and all these are relevant to the product, in this case, cakes that they're making at this bakery. And without any ads, you can see that they had 102 likes. Also, when it comes to content creation, you'll have all types of content, whether it's blogging, photography, videography, and all these things ultimately feed the social media platforms that you're going to be running. So typically when you're creating your content, number one, first of all, do the research to understand what kind of content you're going to create. Do the social listening, listen to what people are doing online, look at what others like you are doing. Plan your content out, create and curate your content, publish your content, measure the impact of that content, and then you strategize and go back into the cycle again. So typically you want to, first of all, audit what do you have already, what do you not have. You can read the copy on each page to see what is available to you. Talk to your target audience, find out what they need, or listen to their conversations on social media. So don't just create content in isolation, actually come from a point of insight. Analyze your content to see whether it can be repurposed. I have a view that sometimes the best content in the world is locked in people's heads. You just need to get that person to break down a particular thing, maybe by recording them, and then hopefully that can be transcribed into content. But you might be surprised there's a lot of content you have available. It might be in the wrong format. It might be in the wrong place. Maybe it's in hard copy, it's not digital. Or maybe the person who knows the things that you need to publish doesn't have time to write content. So, maybe record them, and then, you can use that content and type it out, and, suddenly you have fantastic social media content. Then you have to have your content plan, which is kind of like the schedule of how you're going to publish your content. Ideally, you want to be able to know by now the kind of content you're going to be publishing on the 1st of October. You should know that by now. So the ability to plan and schedule in advance. Of course, be results driven. If you start to publish content and you notice certain types of content are getting more engagement, possibly certain types of content are generating actual sales, then you want to sort of reinforce and do that content more frequently. And of course, this is always a moving target. You don't do the same thing all the time. You want to make sure that you're continuously modifying, changing things. Right now, if you go to TikToks and Reels, things are constantly evolving in that space. The types of videos people create are changing. So make sure that you're compatible or using the new features and functionalities that actually work. So at the heart of it all, whether you're creating content for socials, for websites, on search engines, or community engagement, you really want to make the community the hero of the content. You want to sort of focus on the stakeholders so that the content is built for them and around them. And I'll just give you some quick examples here of interesting content. So this is a Saturday afternoon, I think, a few years ago. I was online and this came up and I thought it was fantastic. So this is KCB Group and CoBank. And you can see KCB was making fun of CoBank. Wachaleo will give a shout out to CoBank Kenya. No one ever talks to them. And then CoBank claps back and says, I've got a gift for you, a lifetime of Masponyo Attention Seekers Anonymous. Hope you make a full recovery. Now, this is often what we refer to as real-time content. There's no, they've just added the logos to memes. They've put some text. There's nothing fancy here, but it just goes to show that even the biggest banks in this country, the biggest local banks, can actually have fun on a Saturday with their social media content. We don't always have to be selling. This is another example. This is actually a Facebook group that I'm a part of. And this is near where I live. And it's usually very quiet. It's somebody saying, oh, I'm looking for a place for the children to go swimming. I'm looking for a school. I'm looking to sell my old furniture. And then this guy shows up one day, without a shirt. And then he has this thing written there, personal home trainer. The first thing that catches my eye is that he doesn't just say personal trainer, he says personal home trainer, which is kind of a bit risque. And then you can see, used a visual without the shirt. Remember, there's so much content online. Why are you going to stop scrolling? Very clever. And you can see that that's on that particular day, this post had 350 comments and 197 engagements. Normally, this group is very quiet, but this guy came in, he had a good strategy, he caught our attention, and you can even see a woman there saying Jesus is Lord. But the point being, that's how you catch attention. Your content needs to stand out from the crowd in a way that is interesting. This is another really interesting example from around the COVID time. This is Humans of New York. Maybe some of you have heard of them before. And this is a family that had lost everything because of the pandemic. They started a restaurant, they lost everything. So Humans of New York, which is a community, I think today of about 17 million people, completely organic. They've not bought any ads, heard their story, and they started telling their story, over a series of posts. Now you'll notice that the first post is 9 of 12. All right, meaning that by the time you get to this post, you've already read another 8 posts. So by the time you get towards the end here is where now they're doing the ask. Yeah, we are currently holding a fundraiser to get the Christie's Kitchen off the ground, but more importantly, to help them get their family to a safe, stable space. If you have been moved by their story, please consider contributing here. And you can see in the last post that they had raised $1.3 million by then, over 500,000 target. I think they're probably back on their feet. But what's my point? Quite often we're convinced that the focus is to sell. But sometimes what we need to do is sell a story, or rather communicate a story that has a powerful message. And in this case, imagine sharing a story of a customer who went through a difficult moment, but because they had bought the insurance product that you recommended, or they'd gone to you to service them, could that story be that kind of story that maybe people need to hear, that then becomes the thing that generates income at the end of it? But remember, the ask only comes at the very end. They invested in telling a very deep, very powerful, very emotionally moving story that eventually moves them to a commercial request, right? And I think, I'm sorry to say this, but in my experience, when I work with insurance agents in the past, there's this overriding push to sell. But I think we need to spend more time educating, creating an emotional connection, sharing narratives around our work and what we do, a day in the life, even behind the scenes, what it takes to do what you do. And I think people then will start to kind of get a window into what it is that you guys do. And more importantly, it opens that opportunity to do business at the end of it. But let's tell the story. Let's get the emotional hook first before we sell, because then the people feel more connected to us through social media. This is another 2 examples that I found very powerful. This is Humans of New York. They had a series they were doing across the world, and they went to South Africa. And there was this very powerful story of this young lady who wanted to become a pilot, and then she couldn't get the money. And she started like an illegal lottery where she was selling, getting people to bid for a watch. The authorities got wind of it. Then a radio station got her story, and they put things on social media. And the next thing, people had raised enough money for her to become a pilot. And at the time, until today, it still may be the most successful Humans of New York story. And it's not even a New York story, it's actually a South African. And you can see that's 437,000 engagements, 11,000 comments, and over almost 36,000 shares. Now, let me tell you guys something. When 36,000 people share a story, it means that they are convinced 100% this is so good, I want my entire network to know about it. A share is probably the highest compliment you can ever get on your social media. And of course, if you're an insurance agent that's providing powerful advice, powerful recommendations, powerful stories maybe of customers who benefited through you, and those things resonate with people, that's what happens. The content goes viral. The second one is actually closer to home, which is chloride Xide. And this was when they were doing a customer service week in 2018. And the interesting thing about this one was this was obviously local, but the senior management went to work dressed as women. The thing I liked about this particular story is that you can see the engagements. It's almost 6,000 engagements, almost 2,000 comments, almost 7,000 shares. Now, the crazy part to this one is that as much as there's entertainment value and they were focusing on breast cancer, they actually sold out the batteries, right? So sometimes a good story actually just opens the door to business, even though that was not the intention. So bottom line is a good story or content that has certain values to it will impact. This one for me was actually a personal one a couple of years ago. And I just saw this post, this billboard on, I think it was Ngong Road. And I just took a picture. It took me less than 5 minutes. And I was just saying, I wonder if some men called and I expected that to show up. Instead, some random Duthi guy came over with a battery. And you can see I had 152 likes, I had 72 retweets, which was my most highest performing tweet at the time. And the point here being sometimes the best content is simple content. It's not complex. It doesn't take a lot of time. It just has a key insight. It has something that has a very simple punchline. And people come back and are like, oh my God, this is fantastic content. And there you go. I was genuinely shocked that it got so much engagement. In fact, the people even called me, were like, Moses, what is this you're posting online? But the point is, sometimes the most innocuous and simple content is the best performing content. But ultimately, there's key principles to this stuff. You need to have images, you need to have videos, you need to have emoji. This is the way that people are most likely to consume your content. You need to make sure that your content is fit for platform, meaning that you find that across the different platforms, they have different dimensions, video sizes, etc. So it's never about one size fits all. It's always about making sure your content is also fit for platform. It's also about looking at the different criteria for the different platforms. So again, a lot of these guidelines you can find online. They're constantly changing. I believe even the ones I'm sharing here are no longer current. So make sure you go online and find out what the current formats are. For instance, I have a YouTube channel myself. I now post long videos on TikTok because TikTok, I think, now gives us up to 1 hour. So I'm like, okay, may not be the right format, but I'll just post it on TikTok because it can now sit on TikTok. So always play around and see where your content should be. Then this is not necessarily locked in, but also things like, the best times to post your content. Again, this is not like 100% perfect, but you'll find that on Facebook, it's more like 1 to 4 p.m. Saturdays and Sundays are different from weekdays when you should post. Equally so for Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter. And again, you can find a lot of this stuff online because these guidelines are constantly changing. But you see that it's no longer just about posting everywhere at the same time. You need to find what the optimal times are to get the most engagement, even sometimes down to the day, right? The specific days of the week when you should be posting content on that platform. Also, too long didn't read. Remember, we talked about the way people have no attention on the internet. So we want to make sure that our content is also easy to consume, easy to digest. People are not going to read your content. They're going to watch a video. They want to keep it short. So make sure that your content is easy to consume. Again, you only have 3 seconds. They've done the research. So basically, the moment somebody sees your content, if in that first 3 seconds, it's not connecting with them either because of the headline, the visual, whatever the message is, you lose them. They swipe up. So you want to make sure that whatever you put in front of them, within 3 seconds, they connect with it, they understand what it's about, and it takes them to the next step of consuming the rest of it. Whether it's a video, an image, a carousel, can you get somebody's attention within 3 seconds? Then there's blogging, which I think is still a valuable space, especially nowadays when you have so many platforms for blogging. It improves search engine optimization. It's good for conversations, thought leadership, brand engagement, and social sharing. I'm going to just skip these for now. I'll share with you guys. When it comes to blogging, again, you also want to make sure you have good headlines, good ways of sort of communicating to people. So remember, the headline is very critical. And if you ever use platforms like BuzzFeed, they do incredibly good headlines, which are very hard to ignore. So remember, it's always about that top of awareness, getting that first moment in for them to become aware of you. And when it comes to sort of blogging platforms, you have platforms like WordPress, you have platforms like LinkedIn, which I just passed. You also have medium.com, free of charge, by the way. You can also create a blog there. Doesn't cost you anything. And some great bloggers we know, of course, Kalui, we know Biko Zulu, and others. Then podcasting, again, like I mentioned, is also blowing up. So you can use something called Spotify for podcasters, which is an incredibly good platform for doing your podcasting. I'm going to just skip that. Again, once you publish there, it also goes to platforms like Apple Podcasts. And then, of course, now social media content planning, where you plan your content according to who you want to reach, how often you want to publish. Also you need to think about who's going to create the content and how will you promote it. So in socials, again, we have what we call the rule of thirds. So you can create a third of your content to promote your organization, convert readers, and so forth. A third of the content can be thought leadership and stories. And then 1/3 could be personal interactions with your communities, what we call user-generated content. You can also create something called a social media matrix. So you can have 50% of content to get people to your blog or your website. 5% could be repurposed from other sources. 20% could be brand goals like events, announcements, CSR, and then 5% could be about culture and people in your organization. Also, you can create a content calendar, which sort of schedules your content according to different days of the week with different topics. The idea, of course, is that when you do your calendar, you'll have things like holidays, seasonal events, things like back to school, for instance. Next week, I think we have a public holiday, launches, recurring campaigns, Christmas. And usually what you'd have on your content calendar would be something like this, where you can see the date, you can see the post image, and you can see the content. You can also see the objective of the content. Is it to inform? Is it a tip? And then you can also see the channel where the content is going to be published. Again, this is made using a simple spreadsheet, but it gives you a way of scheduling and planning your content. These are examples of social media content posts in the past that we did for First Insurance. Again, just an image and specific content. This is the travel insurance product that we're promoting for them at the time. This is another organization, CPF. This is the M Pension. We did some work for them. So just showing you again the kind of content that you might be able to create. And this again is kind of like a schedule where you can have different types of content. So again, you want to mix it up so the content is always diverse and interesting for your stakeholders. So Monday could be FAQs, Monday motivation, Twitter polls, retweeting, key piece of content, user-generated content. And the beauty about this is that with this content diversity, your audience will never get bored. You always have something interesting and fresh that you can share with them. You could also have content themes. So every day you have different types of content. So maybe on Monday you focus on tips. Tuesday could be peeps, where maybe you shed light on your organization or people behind the scenes. Wednesday could be an open day where you post anything. Thursdays are known for TBTs or throwback Thursdays. And maybe that's the day you focus on historical content. Friday is good. Friday is kind of end of the week. People are winding down. So you want to maybe do stories. And then Saturday and Sunday are chilled. So you probably never want to do commercial posts on the weekend. You want to do something that's completely unrelated, to maybe commercial stuff. When it comes to creating content, there are platforms of recommendation. One of them is Canva. Canva is incredibly easy to use. Even the free version of Canva will help you create content very easily. You have Otter. Otter is a very simple tool that you can also use to create content. Just to give you an illustration of what I mean, I'm going to share my screen from the computer. I hope I can get there. Okay, I think we're good. So just to give you an idea, I'm going to go into Otter here and I'm going to click record. New recording. I'm going to allow it this time. And just now you'll see it actually typing up what I'm saying. You'll see in a moment it coming up on the screen. Now, the beauty about this is it also exists as a mobile app so that even if you don't have, a computer, you can maybe have an idea for content or you want to sort of narrate the content because you don't like typing. And the beauty about this is, as you can see, you can actually create the content using Otter. Now, there's a free version of this, but once you hit a certain threshold, you have to pay for it. I think it's about $10 a month. But you can imagine how much easier it would be to create content using something like this if you don't have the time or the ability to type, right? So a very simple, very straightforward way of creating content. Another platform of choice is obviously ChatGPT. I can come to ChatGPT and say something like, my name is Moses, and I am an insurance agent in Kenya selling motor and education and life insurance policies. Please generate, let me call my agent called MK Agency, Insurance Agency. Let me call it MK Insurance Agency. So please generate a social media content calendar. for 5 days, and also create photorealistic images for each post. Now, of course, many have concerns about AI and so forth, but I'm always of the opinion that, look, if you have no options, if you have nothing else, how would you do this, right? So you can actually use ChatGPT. You come in, it's already started creating my content. It's talking about life insurance. It's got a call to action. And most importantly, as we come to the last one, we should also see it starting to generate the images. Now, this is the paid version of ChatGPT. I pay $20 a month for this. But if you don't have the money to hire a social media manager, you know, you can do this. Now, of course, already I'm a bit concerned that it's put people who look white and they look like they're sitting out of the car. But I think you get the general gist. If I come here, I can always redirect it and, I can stop it and say, create images that look like Kenyans. Yeah, AI is never perfect, so I'm just going to ask it to do that. And as we keep going, you'll see that it'll start to output images that are along the lines of what I actually want. Again, it's not perfect, but if you had no option, and of course, even we see, people like Safaricom and others are doing the same, you will have a very decent post, and probably just apply your logo on top using something like Canva, and you have a way forward. So for me, you can imagine in less than 10 minutes, you have a social media content, something good enough to post. It's not perfect, but it is allowing you to move forward and do something that you couldn't have done on your own. And then, of course, you have Canva, which allows us to also create social media content. I can come here. Maybe I want to create something for Instagram. Click on a square. And as I come here, I can either start with a template or I can start from a blank one. So maybe it's like this. I could start editing this. We are insurance. I could come in here, change the numbers, the website, change the image, maybe find an image I previously uploaded. It's going to look for something I can use here. Let's use one of myself. And that's it. Done. So potentially that's how easy it would be to create a post for social with your phone number, an image of your choice, change the text, and all you then need to do is click on share, click on download, and you're done. Now, I'm not saying these are perfect. I'm just saying that these are different ways that people like yourself can create content quickly. Another tool of choice is CapCut. Maybe you've heard of CapCut before, but CapCut also allows you to create video. You can also do script to video, where you can literally just tell it what you want it to create. And you can create videos through CapCut as well as static images. Again, they're not 100% perfect, but the idea is that you have something that's usable. So yeah, I see a lot of comments. I'm just going to keep going so that we get to the end of this, so that we can just conclude the session. And then of course, ChatGPT has grown incredibly fast. It went up to 100 million users in 2 months. I think right now they're over 200 million, and it's really doing well. So you have ChatGPT here. You have why it's doing so well. You also have something called Adobe Firefly. You can also use that for creating visual content. For social media, I think it gives you about 10 images a day. DAL-E is the one I just used, which is part of OpenAI, which is part of ChatGPT. And then, of course, you can see all the different companies that are doing, content in this manner. It's Stanbic Bank. You can see other organizations, Posta, MyDawa. And then also, this is the kind of potential that exists. Imagine selling an insurance, motor insurance policy, and you can create something very funky using, the capabilities of these image generation systems on AI. So do regular updates, do provide stakeholder service. Again, it's not just about posting content, engaging people on social, answer questions, engage your stakeholders, and then also make sure you don't ignore comments, respond to them. Don't fail to update your community with updates, and then use the social media to broadcast content. Key considerations, social media has to be tailored for each platform to maximize impact. You've got to know the what, who, and how to engage your communities, and then also optimize your social content for better impact. Remember, I showed you the different platforms and the different scenarios. So I'm very quickly going to go through this. So this is our Data Protection Act in Kenya. This is through the Office of the Data Protection Commissioner, and it applies to controllers and processors. So a controller is where you are the owner of the content or the information from the stakeholders, and the processor is somebody acting as intermediary. Now, because you probably work with both yourselves and also the insurance companies you represent, my recommendation would be that in your organizations, you consider registering as both controllers and processors of data, because as much as you're handling data on behalf of a third party, there's also content that is also proprietary to you. Does somebody have a question? I can hear a microphone. Again, as we handle personal data, sorry, somebody's microphone is on. Is that a question? Okay, let me continue. So again, as we look at the Kenya Data Protection Act, the overarching principle is that personal data should only be collected directly from the data subject, that is the person in question, and be it for processing, commercial use, otherwise, with the express consent of the subject. So this is where a lot of organizations are sort of running into trouble because they have not taken into consideration that they're using data with the express consent. Also, sensitive data could be things like race, health status, ethnic origin, genetic data, and so forth. And there are specific provisions that also apply to that. In the third facet, the enforcement of the act, the commissioner has wide powers. Personal data acquired by an authorized person, there's risk of harm. And the most important thing here to note is offenses under the act attract a fine of up to 5 million and or a term of imprisonment of up to 10 years. So this data privacy thing, guys, is no joke. We have to be very, very careful as we handle data. Then you have the GDPR, the one from Europe, which is even more punitive. And again, it cascades globally. And it says here companies that had large amounts of data, more than 250 employees, must employ a data protection officer. So in Kenya right now, it's very difficult, of course, to hire somebody just for data protection. Large organizations are doing it. Quite often it's somebody in legal or somebody in IT who takes on this role. But in smaller organizations, that would not be necessary. Again, there are very heavy fines, as you can see. And the data controller is the natural or legal person, public authority or agency. So this could be, if you're thinking about the insurance companies you handle, those are the controllers, and the processor would be the agency or other body that processes personal data on behalf of the controller, which would be you as agents. So the data controller is the person responsible for managing consent, enabling the data subject's right to access of the personal information, and keeping the records and all requests from data subjects accurate. So again, working with the companies you represent, these are the things that you have to consider. So I'm not going to spend much more time on this. Again, I will make sure that you all get a copy of this document. But more importantly, data protection is an issue, and you want to make sure that you also visit the ODPC website. So at least make sure that you're compliant to the Kenyan laws. Fines are being dished out left, right, and center for organizations of all sizes. And you want to make sure that you protect yourself and your organization, but also the stakeholders with whom you're handling data from. Again, you'll have the opportunity to go through this in your own time. I'll share this document with you. It pretty much covers all the bases. And I think maybe just for purposes of showing you where you can go online and start that process of registration, I'm going to just open, before we go to Q&A, just indulge me. I'm just going to open the ODPC website. If you've never used it before, I'm just going to share this with you right now. Okay, so if we come here, I'll just go to odbc.go.k. I'm just cognizant of the fact that we have like 9 minutes remaining. And I'm going to share this with you. So So the Office of Data Protection Commissioner, very informative in terms of the guidelines. The application process is quite straightforward in terms of applying. As you can see, you have the ability here to register for either controller or data processor. In most instances, most of you will probably go for the processor, and it'll give you all the details that you need as far as becoming registered with them. Once you do, you pay, I think, about 4,000 shillings. They'll give you a certificate, and basically that's it. You'll be up and running. So just remember that you can go to odbc.go.ke to make sure that you're compliant. And more importantly, you also have to develop your own data protection policy. So how you handle data is something that I believe you need to provide to them as part of this process. But I think right now we can't run away from this. This is something that I think every organization of every size needs to consider. Now I just want to wrap us up as we come to the end of the masterclass. And again, I do apologize that there was a bit more content than we had time to cover. And I don't know if there's any Q&A. I'm just going to look and see in the chat if there's any questions. I think it's most of you are asking for the presentation. Okay, I see. I think, yeah, I think that's what I'm seeing here. It's predominantly people asking for the deck. So yeah, you will get a copy of the same. Immediately after the presentation, I will share this with Hazel and the team at Association of Kenya Insurers, and you'll have a copy. So at this point, yeah, I see Beryl. Yes, you probably need to get a data protection certificate. Yeah.
Moses, there are some questions.
Yeah, I'm seeing them in the webinar chat, right?
No, in the Q&A section.
Okay, just a moment. Oh, I see. Okay, let me go to Q&A. Can I improve in marketing on digital advertising? Maxon, absolutely. I think if you follow some of the guidelines I've shared in this document, absolutely, Maxon, you'll be able to get benefit of that. I see Caroline Thingo. What to look for in a social media manager? How do you protect your original content? I think if you're looking for a good social media manager, one of the most important criteria is somebody who has ability to create content. So if you're looking for somebody who's university-based, that would usually be somebody who's done communications or some form of marketing degree. And when you want to protect your original content, you can, I mean, I don't know to what extent you can protect your original content, but you can essentially, if you wanted to file for intellectual property protection, you can also do that. Anonymous attendee, kindly, which is the best way to podcast, one-on-one dialogue or single talk? I think both of them can work. The easier one, and I'm talking as a podcaster myself, is when you do an interview format, because then your job is to predominantly come up with the questions, and then you get a guest who's able to answer those questions. So for me, that's a much easier format because the bulk of the effort is actually on your guest and not you. Although if you want to just talk into the microphone or talk into the screen as a podcaster, there are many people who also do that quite successfully. Rose or Yugi, how do you reach a large audience? And of course, if you have a podcast, assuming you're still talking about a podcast, you want to distribute your podcast across your social media platforms. So make sure when you publish it, publish it and then share it across your Facebooks, Twitters and all, so that more people can become aware of that particular podcast. How does one create a community? Pretty much having a social media page means that you can create a community around it. So anyone who likes or becomes a part of your social media page, whether it's Facebook or Instagram or so forth, meaning that they follow it, essentially becomes your community. And the best way to build a community is, as opposed to just publishing content, you're actually having conversations with them. You can run things like opinion polls to get their feedback. You can ask a question and ask them to respond to that question. And then you start to build a community where there's conversation, there's engagement, there's feedback. And that's how you now start building a following from that perspective. Simon Gatia, not a question, but thanks for the training. I've created an ad in ChatGPT and it works. Wow. Simon, that was very quick. Impressive. How do I go about managing cookies? Now, cookies I didn't really cover because that's part of the question around websites. I didn't really include any content about websites today. But cookie consent, whether it's maybe on your own website, there are many platforms today that allow you to install a cookie notice. and it's quite easy to do, especially if you have a website you're running on something like WordPress. So if you're running those, go online and look for a cookie, essentially a cookie or privacy policy plugin, and that is something that you can then install. Somebody on iPhone, where do I get the ACI certificate, the one required for company registration? I think Hazel is responding to you. How do I add signatures to content? I presume you mean a watermark, so that images and the likes show your brand or your name. Many platforms, like if you're using something like Canva, allow you to put that creative overlay. It's quite easy to then embed that onto the image. Is there a simple way of creating websites without programming? Absolutely. Benson, I'm just trying to think of the tools that the Squarespace, square then space.com. Have a look at them. And there's also another one I think called, is it Weebly? But Squarespace is a good one. It allows you to build websites without programming. Yeah. So I verbally responded to those questions. I don't know if there's any more in the chat. I did see some in the chat as well. Other than Canva, which other app for watermarks? Caroline, I think you can also use CapCut. The one I showed you, CapCut.com. Have a look at that as well. Come to the end, I think, like I mentioned previously, I like quotes. So often we say it's not the strongest of the species that survives, not the most intelligent. It's the ones that are most adaptable to change. So if nothing else today, my call to action to all of you, and again, within 2 hours, I think we've covered a lot of ground. I'd find it hard to imagine you can retain all of this. So I would say, please try and adopt and adapt and sort of change your methodology around what you do as an insurance agent. Use the tools and the platforms I've recommended. And most importantly, if you do this right, then you should see a significant impact to your businesses. And thank you so much for your time and attention for 2 hours. It's been a real pleasure. And I hope that we can continue to engage in the future.